changed at one point, and your work became overtly political. There was a message there. Can you talk a bit about that transition?
Sure. At the beginning of my career, I first of all was initially making just that image of Andre the Giant that had started off as an inside joke, but the way people reacted to it in public space made me think about the usual presentation of visuals in public space being advertising or signage, and how thoroughly it was monopolized by those areas, and there was very little alternative expression. So and I also saw how people reacted to images as a fascinating reflection of their personalities, like a Rorschach test. So for a little while, I thought that mystery was really important. Just put stuff out there that makes people wonder what it is. I read about Heidegger and his concept of phenomenology, the idea that people have become numb to their surroundings and they need unusual experiences to reawaken a sense of wonder. So I felt that the sticker campaign was doing that, and at the moment that I said what my point of view was, or what the point of view of the campaign was, that it would stop people from having first that internal debate and then that discussion with others, what's this about, and calling the entire context of public space into question. But after a while, people started to figure out who I was and what I was up to, and it was less mysterious. And especially after the internet, where you can just Andre the Giant Google, bam, in 5 minutes what it is. There was that, and then, but probably the biggest reason for my transition was George Bush being elected. When you're like thinking, okay, I'm putting this thing out there, and I'd love for it to catalyze a discussion that would get people to question authority, question propaganda, come to their own epiphanies. I'd rather not be didactic. And then George Bush gets elected, and I was like, all right, we're gonna have to speed up this process. The softer approach isn't working, but I also the themes of questioning police brutality and surveillance and loose, vaguely Orwellian ideas had been in my work, but I also think that I was maybe maturing. Just sounds so horrible to use that word. I feel like a kid still, but. My ideas were becoming more resolved, I think, in some ways, and I was ready to be more committal about my point of view. I think part of it was that I realized that when I was younger, I always thought, well, the people in power, they have everyone's best interest in mind. They're looking out for us. Don't even question it, And then you get older and you realize, you start to pull that thread, and man, the whole sweater just comes apart really quickly. That you're like, wow, the lunatics are running the asylum. I felt maybe that I was not qualified to have a political point of view. I actually realized maybe I'm more qualified now. So yeah, I guess, it's I think just engaging in a debate and a discussion, being for me, even if I adjust my position, I think being as honest about where I am at that moment is good for me, and it's good to encourage other people to be the same way, because there's a lot of post 9/11. There was a lot of self-censorship, and the conversation was pretty much run by people that had a specific agenda, and everyone else sat it out because they were afraid to be perceived as un-American, and that actually, I think, took the country in a really, really bad direction for a little while.
Seen that before.
So, speak up.
Yeah. And it's speak up, empowerment, and those are some of the themes in your work that are there. I mean, here we have George Bush. Are you what are are there specific messages, like, that ideas that you're trying to get, that you want that you want your work to convey?
Well, there are issues that I deal with very directly. Some of them have been. I'm opposing war if it's not absolutely necessary. People always talk about this was a noble war, that was what was a noble cause. If you can deal with something diplomatically without violence, that's always the better way to go. I mean, it's not high school football, There's people's lives at stake, and there's American lives at stake. There's civilians in Iraq or Afghanistan, and things are complicated. But I generally tend to say it's better to look for a diplomatic solution, and I generally think that making sure that the planet's inhabitable for the next generation is a good idea. I have kids. And so, I strapped my Hummer, and Prius now. I actually never had a Hummer, the vehicle.
Yeah.
His wife's right over there.
Sorry. Fox News might take that. Anyway, I think in a lot of ways there's I believe in the people being as empowered as possible in the political process. Not just voting, but using if they're an artist, to make art about issues they care about. If you're a writer, write about stuff you care about. If you're a musician, make songs about it. But there's just so many different ways that I think people can be involved in shaping the world. I mean, how you spend your money, who you support. This making art is, for me, it's still primarily about making pictures. You want to make something. People are very busy. You say, I have an opinion. Wow, who cares? You make a picture that gets their attention, draws them in, and then hopefully they'll care about what the point of view is. But people always say, well, do you consider yourself an activist? It just gets into semantics, but I consider myself an artist, and I have ideas. But once you say, yeah, I'm an activist, and all of a sudden, like, every single cause is either hitting you up to do something, or people are saying, yeah, but you weren't at this rally, you're not a real activist. I'm just like, I'm an artist.
But you do donate a lot of work for causes you believe in. You've done things for the ACLU. You've done all sorts of things. How active are you in that in terms of making work for causes you believe in?
Probably every other poster I make has some sort of cause or charity component to it. So, like the Cornell West image that I just made, some of the money's going to the City Kids Foundation, for inner city arts for people in New York. Whether it's I did stuff for the BP spill that was going to the National Resources Defense Council. This is my choice. People say that art and commerce don't mix. That once you have a commercial component to what you're doing, it taints it. It loses its integrity. The way I've looked at it is, everyone needs to make money to facilitate what they're doing, and sometimes that's just basic survival. And then, for me, beyond that, rather than saying, this is a good cause, but let me appeal to your conscience, give money to this, I'd rather just make an image that deals with it, where people like the image anyway, and then I give the money. They don't have to give the money. I choose to give the money, and then I can talk about the cause on my website, and if they want to give more money, cool, but